Michelle writes in IgA. I'm not sure. So IgA, that's your immune mucosal barrier. If you have a question, let me know. Edgar writes in, I have a candida overgrowth, die off, slowed down until I started NAC. Can a hidden virus and parasite come out of the biofilm bust? I have horrible bloating since. It's possible. I mean, NAC is a really good biofilm buster. You can combine it with ginger tea, Edgar, because that's also a really good biofilm buster. Typically, I don't ever just go after candida by itself, because I do find that a lot of people that may have candida may also have another parasite. And so what happens is it's like throwing a rock in a bee's nest. You start killing the candida, but there are other critters underneath the surface that are even stronger or even more virulent than the candida. So I would like to know, is there anything else just outside of the candida that needs to be addressed? So that's where a good stool test would go. I know we just had it yesterday, Edgar. So I would look a little bit deeper, continue doing what you're doing, add in the ginger tea, maybe throw in some activated charcoal. But if those are still happening, then I would look a little bit deeper to make sure no other infections are present. Hope that helps. Bernardo writes in, low elastase on my GI map. What does it mean? It means that your pancreatic enzyme output's low. Typically, it also means that lower hydrochloric acid may be present too, because hydrochloric acid is a really potent stimulator for enzyme production. So I always make sure, okay, let's give the extra enzymes, let's give the extra HCl, and let's work on the root cause. Do we have gut stress? Do we have emotional stress? Are we eating while we're stressed? Are we drinking a lot of fluid while we eat? Those kind of things. So I would look at getting those addressed. Charlie writes in, what does the future look like for these functional medicine tests? How long do you think it will take for the mainstream to adopt it? I don't think the mainstream will ever adopt it. I mean, it's going to be something that has to exist in the free market, because a lot of what's happening with conventional medicine, it's allopathic acute care medicine. And it's like this, all right? So if you have insurance, imagine you have your car insurance. You never expect your car insurance to pay for your tune-ups, to pay for your oil change, to pay for your new rims or the new tires, right? Your insurance is there to help if you get in a car accident and there's lots of damage, right? That's kind of what your insurance is for. So the problem is people have expectations on their insurance that really exist outside of the functional medicine paradigm. Right? So things that you would do to your car that I mentioned, those would be the same kind of things that you would do to your body. And I think that's where a good HSA, having these new HSA rules increase so you could put more money into an HSA account, tax deferred. That's going to be the best way, because it's going to keep costs down. If you start having the government pay for supplements, you're going to see the cost literally go up 400% and 500% minimum, just because there's a massive bureaucracy behind it. Like when I have a product, it's like I get it from the manufacturer, right? To me, to the patient. You start putting a whole bunch of bureaucrats in there, everything is going to start going up. Hope that makes sense. So I think you have your insurance, which should be like, $5,000 deductible. It should be super, super cheap, right? You have your HSA account that you can max out tax-free. So that saves you on what you pay for taxes. And that's going to be how it's going to be. That's going to be the best way, I think, for it to work. And then your insurance should go down cost-wise, because you're only paying for high deductible stuff. Car accidents, like, cancer, heart attack, things that are really going to potentially bankrupt you. Hope that helps. No gallbladder, 3/4 removed. Okay, so 3/4 of your gallbladder removed. Should I take bile salts to get into keto? Absolutely. You should be on bile salts and HCl if you have your gallbladder removed, for sure. Addie writes in, what's your thoughts on hydrocolon therapy? Does it help Candida and SIBO? I think hydrocolon therapy is good if you really are having extreme constipation and irregularity issues. My problem is it doesn't fix the underlying issue, which is there's dysfunction in that migrating motor complex. There's typically low enzyme and hydrochloric acid production. There's typically bacterial overgrowth that needs to actually be killed. And going in there with a hose and flushing things out will not kill it 100%. I think it's a good palliative thing, especially if you're extremely constipated, but I do not see it getting to the root underlying cause. But I think it's good to add in there as long as you keep the root cause in mind. Hamza writes in, hey doc, I feel bloated when I eat rice. Don't eat it. It's a grain. There could be some gluten sensitivity. It's not a FODMAP, but there could be some gluten sensitivity. So do an AIP template for a bit and see how you do. Spivey writes in, I got a good blood ketone meter, but the strips are too expensive. Yeah, look at the Keto Mojo. I have the Abbott Precision Extra. Those strips are $2 to $3 a strip. You can go on Amazon and get them cheaper. The Keto Mojo are down to $1. So that's a good alternative. Drake writes in, do you have a preference for carnitine versus acetyl L-carnitine? In my line, I have one called carnitine supreme, and it's just L-carnitine. So I like the L-carnitine for improving carnitine levels, which help the mitochondria, which the carnitine shuttle is involved in taking fat and bringing it into the mitochondria and shoving it in and generating energy. So that's why carnitine's great. Dragon writes in, Charles Poliquin says that chlorella binds the toxins, but it's just moving it around in the body, so it's a bad choice. What's your opinion? I think it's good. Chlorella is only going to bind to stuff in the gut. So it will bind to it, and then ideally it'll just get moved out your stool. So that's the whole idea with that. It's going to be bound up. And again, metals are going to be more of an issue when they're free, when they can just bind to stuff. But if it's bound to selenium or bound to charcoal or bind to some kind of fiber, it's going to be less damaging. So even if it's just bound up, it's going to do better. It's not going to go into your cells and pull it out. It's not going to act like a DMSA or EDTA or a DMPS. It will bind it up, and it will primarily do it in the gut. So I don't have a big deal with that, especially if you have fillings. You know, that metal is going to be going down your mouth into your gut anyway, and that will bind a lot of it up. So I'm okay with that. I would say what Poliquin's saying there is maybe the DMSA, maybe what he's referring to, which is a chelator that could move it around more. That's why I think it's important that if you do a DMSA or something like that, you need the antioxidants and the sulfur aminos to make glutathione, and you also need some binders in there to help. Michelle writes in, still struggling with parasites. Any new ideas? Depends on the parasite. Some people have a lot and they have to do multiple rounds, and it depends on the protocols that you're doing. Screamin writes in, ketone strips from Canada are cheaper. Google them. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know the cheapest ones right now are Keto Mojo. That's the best one from what I understand. Dr. J, what's your opinion on using Retin-A 0.1% on the face for wrinkles? I think using retinol is great. I think the pharmaceutical Retin-A can be very irritating and has some side effects. So I would use a good brand that has full spectrum retinol. So there's two brands that I like to use. I like to use the retinol from Marie Veronique. There's another one I'm experimenting with the company called Michelle. And they're great. I think retinol, vitamin A retinol, not the synthetic one, is really, really good. And again, the pharmaceutical ones that you get from the dermatologists are very similar to the cosmeceutical one, just as potent, a little less side effects because it's not quite as concentrated, and it doesn't have a whole bunch of fillers in it too. You're welcome, Mike. Let's see here. I'll lose my place, guys. We got a ton of questions. I'm going to try to go through these faster, okay? Apologize if I'm missing your questions here, guys. Okay, I'm going to go back to Oscar. Doc, do you think apple cider vinegar, because it contains ketones, feeds candida? No, I don't think it would. Again, if you're really sensitive, there could be some probiotic and potentially some beneficial yeast in there. So it may, for the most part, you know, it's going to be one of those things where it'll provide acidity and hopefully kill it. So I think that's totally good. Spivey writes in, try to stay off the carbs, consume some protein and probiotics regularly. Yep, I agree. Awesome. Iana writes in, what protein powder and milk is safe for both AI and FODMAP? Typically, I would do, you could do coconut milk as a milk. I'm fine with that. And then for protein, I would typically do collagen peptides, and I would typically do pea protein. That's a good one. And be careful, right? Because I read a article today looking at a lot of the vegetarian proteins, and they're really high in heavy metals. So you really want to make sure you buy them from a good source. So if you look at my line, my true pea protein, we get independently tested by third parties to ensure metals and molds and those kind of things aren't there. So you really want to buy from a reputable source. So if you're looking for one, my pea protein is great, and then my true collagen is also great. You really want to make sure you're going with someone, if it's not me, that has independent testing on it. So that way you can ensure that it's good. I've had to send batches back to manufacturers because they have been high in it. So you really want to go with a good name brand. Kim writes in, how can I find out why every healthy thing I eat produces the most noxious, foul-smelling gas? You probably have SIBO, and you probably are not breaking it down. So low stomach acid, low enzymes. James writes in, happy Friday, Dr. J. What do you think about taking monolaurin for H. pylori and bacterial overgrowth in addition to GI Clear products? I think it's great. I have a product called monolaurin Synergy. I think it works good. I typically use monolaurin more for viruses, but I think it works really good with bacteria too. What are your top 3 vitamins or supplements that you think everyone should take? I think a really good high quality multi is going to be really important. I think a fish oil is great, but if you're eating like 4 servings of good quality fish a week, you may not need it. So you could do a cod liver instead. I think a really good adaptogen, depending on how much stress you're dealing with, could be good. And then after that, I mean, vitamin D is going to be a good one, but it depends, right? Because if you're deficient in selenium and not vitamin D, then selenium may be that better one. So I would say one of those two, and or just getting some testing done to figure out what's going to be your bigger need. That makes sense. Let's see here. I meant that my gallbladder and 3/4 liver had been removed in a car accident. Had to go into keto. What besides bile salts helps? No, that's good. I mean, your liver will regenerate, so keep doing all the right things. Fat's pretty neutral stress on the liver. So if you're trying to take stress off the liver, don't put the extra carbs in there, and that's going to be huge for you. Hope that helps. Any tips on how to get off? I'm not sure what that means. Monica writes in TSH at 3.6, T4 at 0.68, very low T4, T3 at 357.6. Oh, that's a weird reference range. I'm not sure about that T3. The reference range here in the States is going to be on the low side 71, the high side like 160 to 180. So that reference range is just totally off. I just started taking Nature Throw the other day, 60 mics every other day. 120 the others. Are these numbers really bad? Your T4 is really bad. Your T3 is just a weird reference range. So I imagine your T3 has to be low because your T4 is terrible. Drake writes in, Dr. Marcajani, I have experienced very high levels of fatigue after taking just 1 oil of oregano capsule. Any recommendations to reduce fatigue while trying to get rid of the infections? Yeah, you got to do this in the right order, right? So you got to deal with the digestion and the inflammation and the hormones first. This is the biggest mistake, Drake, that most people make. They just go after killing things and they feel like crap. So of course you can add in binders like oil of oregano and activated charcoal, but you got to do things in order and work on the digestion and the inflammation and the hormones first. Mirvat writes in, solutions of thyroid. Can it be solved only through diet or need surgery? So thyroid nodule. So most nodules tend to be autoimmune based. So I would get the autoimmunity under control, work on the adrenals and the hormones, and make sure your thyroid is supported at a hormone level that, you know, is reasonable. So we talked about that. T3 free around 3.0, TSH closer to 1. Those are good starting places, and get on an autoimmune template and get in to see me for an appointment too. Addie writes in, what are the symptoms of SIBO? It could be bloating. It could be gas. It could be constipation. It could be diarrhea. It could also be atypical symptoms. It could be brain fog. It could be fatigue. It could be anxiety. It could be depression. Because when you affect digestion and you affect nutrients getting into the body, that bottleneck of nutrients, again, these run everything. These are the neurotransmitters, the mitochondria. So that's why you can have so many atypical, meaning symptoms outside of just bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea. That helps. Jessica writes in, how do you feel about quality fermented cod liver oil? I think it's great. I think it's a good idea. Can I stop taking antacid omeprazole when treating H. pylori? Potentially, only if you're working with a good functional medicine doc. Again, if you have a lot of like irritation and burning, you got to be careful. If you don't, and you can pull it out because you made diet changes and then the heartburn is under control, then yeah, you can work on some enzymes and HCl, but you want to work on that with a qualified funk med doc. What's the best time to take selenium with thyroid med? I would want to take your thyroid med by itself. In my thyroid balance, there's a little bit of selenium mixed in with it, but I would be taking your selenium in a multi-form, probably with food. That'd be your best bet, like a selenomethionine with food. What's for lunch and dinner? Oh, well, this morning, I'll just give you breakfast. I had some Bulletproof coffee here, coffee with butter and MCT. Love it. And then I had some bacon and eggs. And today for lunch, I have a couple hours off. So my wife and I will be going out to get sushi. So I'll get sashimi. We're going to bring some MCT and coconut aminos instead of the gluten-free soy sauce. And I may do a couple rolls. So a little bit of white rice, but I'm going to bring some extra activated charcoal and enzymes to help buffer that. But great question, James. Oscar writes in, the thing is, Darren Schmidt, also on YouTube, is a chiro. I know Darren very well. His apple cider vinegar feeds candida. I mean, I think it depends. If you go look at, what's his name, the fungal link, Doug Kaufman, he recommends apple cider vinegar with candida. Now, he is against the balsamic vinegar because that's like very high in mycotoxins, which are toxins from mold and yeast. But I just think it depends, right? I think a lot of people have candida because of sugar, because of antibiotics, because of poor digestion. So if it helps with digestion, I think it's okay. A lot of people are going to get yeasty if they have it. So they'll get, bloated or gassy, those kind of symptoms. I think it may be okay. But again, if you're taking apple cider vinegar for digestion to increase acid levels, I think you're better off using hydrochloric acid. It's more should say synergistic, or I should say more potent than the acetic acid that's in apple cider vinegar. Kim writes in, I take 3 to 5 betaine HCl with pepsin and multiple digestive enzymes at each meal. 1 creon pancreatic enzyme. Good. I think that's good. If that's where you feel best on, that's fine. If you have a question, let me know. Christian writes in, any tips on how to get off proton pump inhibitors? Yeah, very carefully. So I've done podcasts on this topic. I've been interviewed on this topic. You have to fix the underlying cause and why you were having gut irritation. So if there's atrophic gastritis where the gut lining is super thin, you got to work on healing the gut lining. If you're not digesting and breaking down your foods, you got to add in the digestive nutrients to help with the breakdown of the protein and the fat and the carbs. You have to adjust the diet. So you may need to go on a special kind of diet, whether it's an autoimmune diet or a low FODMAP diet. And you're going to have to get rid of the infections that may be there that cause the issue to begin with. Again, it's a little more complicated than that, but that's a good start. Ian writes in, bone broth from conventional bones are better than none. Best to avoid if can't get grass-fed. I mean, I would say you're right. I mean, I would say you want to get pasture-fed, grass-fed, but I would say it's better than nothing because of the nutrients you're getting. I think it's better than nothing. James writes in, Tom Brady's going to be here another 5 years. Got to get Alex Guerrero on the podcast and get some insights and secrets. Yeah, I think that's great. I definitely need to get Alex on there. I think with Alex, I mean, he's doing a lot of things with muscle pliability, which are great. I mean, Tom Brady's diet's basically paleo. I mean, he eats 20% meat. He eats a ton of vegetables. He goes very low on fruit. He goes very low on nightshades. He has some decent starch in the wintertime. Totally makes sense. Very paleo-esque, if you will. I'd say even autoimmune paleo. Again, a lot of people kind of mislabel him. Oh, he's vegan or whatever. No, he's not. He has a vegan cook that did an article in the Boston Globe. So everyone thinks he's vegan, but he even does whey protein too. How accurate is the GI map test? Is it 99% represented what parasites are in your gut? I think it's the best one out there. I mean, how accurate, how sensitive and specific it is, I think it's really good. Again, my issue with any test is false positives tend to be more rare than false negatives. So if it's not on the test, if it came back negative, it could potentially still be there. But if we see it positive, then we pretty much know it's there. And it matches my symptoms up, matches patients' symptoms up pretty well. Monica writes in, thank you for everything, Dr. J. How's the baby doing? Aiden's doing great. I have not seen him this morning yet because he was put back to bed before I got up at 7:30, but he's doing really good. Wife's doing good. I put him down last night at 11:30, gave him his homeopathic for his teeth, for his teething, and he's doing really good. Thanks for asking. Really healthy. Again, his mom's diet is absolutely amazing, which helps a ton. Catherine writes in, was on LDM 3 milligrams for 2 years. Doctor increased it to 4.5 milligrams. I felt terrible. Need to lie down 18 hours a day with increased joint pain and brain fog. What do you think this means? I mean, low-dose naltrexone is what LDN is, and basically it's like an opiate blocker. And the whole idea is that by blocking the opiate pathways in the brain, it kind of creates this modulatory balancing effect of the immune system. That's kind of like what's happening there. So my thing is you're using a drug to probably overcompensate for an immune system that's out of balance. So it may just be too high for you. I would also say is continue to look at getting to the root cause of why your immune system may be out of balance to begin with. So of course, like food and other underlying infections. Again, if you have infections and you have other issues of inflammation in your body and you're trying to push around the immune system with LDN and not get to the root of it, then I think you're missing the boat. So as long as you've addressed everything else and you're using LDN palliatively and everything else has already been addressed, I think it's fine. I would just lower the dose back down. That makes the most sense to me. Best way to support hypothalamus, I would say adaptogens. I mean, ashwagandha is going to be really good. You can also look at, glandular tissue to help support it from a glandular perspective. And of course, keeping the cortisol under control, because too much stress, too much cortisol will mess up the feedback loop between the HPA and adrenal and thyroid axis. Bernardo writes in, you mentioned the Keto Mojo, and I see it also checks hematocrit and hemoglobin. Yep. Do you think it'll also be able to check insulin anytime soon? I hope so. That'd be ideal, right? I think that the next level will be if we can get one that tests insulin as well. That makes a lot of sense because, if your blood sugar is at 95 and then your fasting insulin's at 5 or 4, fine. But if you're at 95 and your insulin's at 20, well, that doesn't matter that your blood sugar looks good. It's your insulin's overcompensating to keep it down. So knowing your insulin will make a huge difference because blood sugar is a late stage indicator because how it works is this. Here's your blood sugar. Let's say this is normal, okay? And let's say here's your insulin. And over time, your insulin has to go up to keep the blood sugar normal. At some point, let's just call it here. Now the insulin is so high, now the blood sugar starts creeping. The problem is this process, this delay takes sometimes 10 years to happen. That's why just using blood sugar as your indicator of health regarding your metabolic syndrome is really a late stage indicator. What's the best digestive enzyme to buy? There's lots of good ones that are out there. A combination of proteolytic enzymes, lipolytic for fat, carbohydrate-based. I think those are great types of enzymes. There's some out there like Digest Gold or Enzymatica. I have one in my line called Enzyme Synergy that I formulated. So obviously I'm going to be biased to what I manufacture, but there's some other good ones out there. The one I recommend is Enzyme Synergy. What's your workouts looking like lately? I haven't been doing a ton of working out. I mean, I walk about 7 to 8 miles a day. I have my kettlebells in the corner. I have my push-up bars, and I've been doing bands. So I'm trying to, like, in between patients, I can do like my curl to push. I can do rows. I have my TRX. I can pop in a Tabata here and there. So I keep it pretty minimal. I do water skiing on the weekend, and I keep my diet rock solid. So I got to be a little bit more diligent. I've lost my time at the end of the day to exercise like I'd like to because of my newborn kid. So hopefully I'll get back into it, but I'm just keeping, the walking going, keeping my steps up close to 15,000 steps a day, and then trying to get in some kettlebell swings and push-ups. And I have my bands for other stuff. So great question. What do you think I can do on one meal a day at 2,100 hours? So what's that? Is that 9 o'clock? I'm from Spain. This is regular dinner time. Thank you for your time. Well, I mean, here's the deal. That's a great question. And my mouse is just scrolling too fast, guys. I think that's a great question. My bigger issue is this. If you need, let's say, Oscar, I'm 6'2", 210, 215 pounds, right? Let's say I need 2,500 calories a day. And those 2,500 calories, are going to have nutrients attached to it. Do you think it's really going to be possible for me to get 2,500 calories of food in one meal, right? It's going to be really freaking hard. So, I mean, I'd say if you're going to do that, it would kind of be like a cleanse thing, if you will. I think it's going to really stress your blood sugar out. I would like to do, like if people do intermittent fasting, the biggest flaw of it is, if you're doing an 18/6, you got to make sure in that 6 hours that you eat, you get enough calories, i.e. nutrients for you. So typically during IF, you can do 2 meals a day. It's easier. So that'd be 1,200 calories times 2, or you can do an 8/16. Yeah, 8/16. So 8 hours of actual eating. So more like a 12 to 8, where you can do 2 meals and a snack. That's just easier to do. It just comes down to, are you going to get enough nutrients? That's the key. I'd say the big thing, a lot of people benefit from fasting because of the fact they're cutting out food allergens, right? They're giving themselves a break on the digestive system. And that's why they feel so much better. It's not necessarily the fast, it's what they're not putting in their body. It's the same thing with vegetarians. They're like, oh my God, I feel so good being a vegetarian. It's like, well, number one, you're not eating all this crappy meat. You're not eating all this refined sugar, alcohol. If you're doing more plants than grains, then you're not eating as much grains either, right? You're not eating, hopefully, all the trans fats. So of course, you're going to feel better. Hopefully, you're cutting out a lot of the refined sugar, so you feel better as well. The problem is you're still not getting a lot of good fats and proteins. You're eating probably a ton of carbohydrates. And, you probably cut out some of that meat because your HCl levels are so crappy, you can't break it down. So you feel bloated and gassy afterwards. So get to the root cause. Crado writes in, when I get what I assume is tinea in the areas where I sweat, I also feel tired and have a flare-up in symptoms. Is there a direct link between leaky gut and fungus? Yeah, I mean, that's a stressor. It's an infection that we would consider could open up the tight junctions. LPS does it with bacterial overgrowth. You could have it with yeast as well. I think it's one thing that goes into that stress bucket that can unzip that gut lining and make it more leaky. Kim writes in, the question is, taking all of that digestive support, I still have ridiculous gas. Should I go on an autoimmune diet and consume collagen and bone broth daily? Yeah, you should. And you should get your gut tested, and you should make sure that food's easier to break down. I would cut out FODMAPs, and I'd maybe put the food in a crock pot as well, pre-break it down. What are the best digestive enzymes to buy? I already mentioned that. I like my enzyme synergy. Do you get enough sleep with the baby? Yeah, I do. My wife's stay at home right now, so she's able to get up once at night. Our routine is this: we put Aiden down like around 7 p.m. So hopefully he sleeps a good 4 or 5 hours. I go in before I go to bed. So sometime around 11, I go in and dream feed him. So I literally wake him up, give him a bottle of breast milk. That buys him an extra 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So my wife goes to bed around 9:30, and then she hopefully gets up around 3:30 to 4 to feed him. So then she can get 6 hours of sleep, and then hopefully go down for another 2 hours. And then we have help come a couple days a week. So then if it's a rough night, she can sleep 2 or 3 hours in the morning to make up on that. So yeah, we got a pretty good routine with that. Thanks for asking. Where can you get an insulin home test? Are they reliable? I'm not sure there are insulin home tests. I mean, there probably is, but typically that's going to be a fasting blood test that you get like at your local LabCorp request. Parasites come back with medium candida, E. coli, Proteus vulgaris. How do I tackle this? Well, I mean, you're going to need a SIBO and candida clearing program. So I'd refer you to those podcasts or reach out to me specifically. When the JIH apparel and merchandise going to be available? I don't know. I mean, the supplements are going to be the big things that I have going right now in the lab testing. If you have any ideas for me, James, please let me know. Genesis writes in, 144 vitamin D, barely supplementing it, low exposure to sunlight, 280 oxalates on biohealth organic acids. What's up with these? I would just try to look and see where the vitamin D is coming from, and just cut off all supplementation that has vitamin D in it and see how that goes. Again, the oxalates being high, you'd have to give me the reference range for that lab. But if the oxalates are higher, you can add in some extra magnesium citrate to break it down. If you have a lot of yeast and candida, you definitely want to work on getting that dialed in too. Okay, cool. I got tons of questions coming in here, guys. All right, Francis writes in, I took 2% Lugol's iodine around 45 milligrams and felt a lot worse. Yeah, I was taking selenium along with it, got thyroid tested, TSH came back at 14.1. Yeah, I mean, you probably had like a Wolff-Chaikoff effect where you really shut down that sodium potassium or that sodium iodine transporter, that sodium iodine symporter that transfers the iodine into the cell. It probably got shut down because of that ridiculously high amount of iodine. That's probably what happened. So I would use a more realistic dosing of iodine, start at a couple hundred mics and work up weekly from there. Just way too high. I mean, that's hundreds of times the RDA. Way too high. What's the reasoning for this? Is it iodine? Yeah, it is. Yep, absolutely. Wolff-Chaikoff effect. Google it. What are the first 3 tests that you suggest for gut dysbiosis, floating stools, and terrible smelling constant gas? Do the GI map test. That's the first thing I would do. Got a keto mojo defective, returned it, getting precision extra instead. Got it. I tried returning it and getting a new keto mojo. I mean, if you can get it, you're going to save a lot of money in the long run because the strips are a lot cheaper. Drake writes in, I take digestive enzymes and HCl with meals to help with digestion. I started taking mastic gum between meals to get rid of H. pylori. Should I take digestive enzymes with mastic gum? I mean, I would do the enzymes only with food. Screaming George, you're welcome. Francis writes in, I come back with low testosterone as well, being on pregnenolone tabs for 2 years. Should I try Clomid to reset the feedback loop? Again, it depends. I mean, I would be working with DHEA as well. I'd be fixing the gut and making sure all the other underlying issues are supported and addressed. Mirvat writes in, I heard Mark Hyman say he gave a woman complaining from chronic fatigue, thyroid hormone. She began to lose weight and restore her strength. When is this hormone recommended? It depends. We'd have to do lab testing and see where your levels are at, and we'd have to make recommendations on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, I mean, if you're low in thyroid hormone and we raise it up to therapeutic levels, yeah, all those things are possible. We just want to make sure we get to the root cause as well. Francis writes in, Dave Asper uses T3 for his Hashimoto's, even though it's in remission. Is there a point where too much damage is done and you need T3? Yes. Again, it depends on how long the autoimmunity has been there and if you can come off it and if your thyroid can make enough hormone without supplementation, for sure. Do you currently use T3? In my thyroid balance, there is some T3. Absolutely. Bob writes in, any recommendations for supplements or lifestyle ideas for back muscles acting up. Well, I mean, you'd want to get to the root cause. If you're sitting all day, you'd want to see a good chiro, a good massage, or myofascial release or active release therapist to get to the underlying soft tissue, a good chiro to work on the muscles and the joints moving through good adjustments. And of course, just making sure the good lifestyle things are dialed in. Do you give any credit to C60, carbon 60 fluorines? You have to give me a little bit more info on what that is, Oscar. Not sure. Feedback on Retin-A for the face to target wrinkles. Okay. I mentioned that earlier in the show already. I think it's great. I wouldn't use Retin-A. It's too irritating. Use a retinol from a good cosmeceutical company. I like Michelle or Marie Varnick. Get the blood test, glucose kit at the pharmacy at Walmart. Okay, cool. Can I eat oats with dairy products? I typically wouldn't. What do you think of 500 micrograms of molybdenum and calcium to glucarate for MTHFR to boost detox and reduce gas? Depends. Again, I would, if you have MTHFR issues, you'd want to work on the other B vitamins. You'd probably want to give some other types of B12 in there. And I would like to see an organic acid test to see how those pathways are actually doing. Hamza writes in, I appreciate your work, Doc. Thank you so much. How do you do a gallbladder flush? Is it safe? Gallbladder flushes are interesting, right? Because you're taking some Epsom salts. You're going to be drinking like some grapefruit juice or apple juice. You'll be taking like a whole bunch of olive oil. And then like the next day you have a whole bunch of stones come out, right? The question is, are those stones congealing from the Epsom salts and the high fat and the apple juice? That's the question. So the Townsend letter, they did an article on this where they said that it's congealing from the actual flush. It may not actually be coming out of the gallbladder. So it's one of those things. I don't think it's going to hurt you, but you want to make sure that you work with someone and you fix the underlying digestive issues first, because if you have stones that are sharp and kind of have shards and you start contracting the crap out of that gallbladder through the flushing ingredients that I mentioned, the Epsom salts, the olive oil, and the grapefruit juice, you're going to cause that gallbladder to contract. And that's going to be like grabbing a porcupine, and you could really inflame your gallbladder. So I'd be really careful with that. Test for chronic fatigue. Yeah, I mean, look at thyroid, look at adrenals, and look at the mitochondria through organic acids. So to taper off thyroid meds, could I take every other day? Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. You'd really want to work with someone to make sure the underlying issues are addressed and to make sure there's no autoimmunity present at the same time. Because if there's a lot of antibodies that are high, then you'd really want to get those antibodies under control before tapering. You're welcome, Jessica. Get mania when taking your mitosynergy. Why could this be? So if you're getting, I mean, it just could be too much B vitamins or too stimulating for you. So if that's the case, I would just do one capsule and then work your way up. One capsule, work your way up, and make sure you take it with food. And if you have to go to a half a capsule, go to a half a capsule. But I mean, the mito's just got all the B vitamins, carnitine, creatine, ribose, carnitine. So a lot of those mitochondrial nutrients. So just go slower and taper it up, Charlie. Michelle is a great facial product company. Yeah, they are. They have really good products. If you go to Cosmetic Skin Database, their chemicals in there are super, super low. The best way to do a safe liver cleanse, again, it depends. I mean, there's phase 1 and phase 2 nutrients that we use. Like I use my Liver Supreme and my Detox Aminos as a great way to cleanse the liver and gallbladder. But I mean, just changing your diet, just getting your digestion working better, and making it so you can break down those proteins, that does so much for your liver. And just like drinking clean water and like not getting exposed to a whole bunch of chemicals through your food and your environment, doing some sweating, like just those simple things, even though it's not like a direct liver cleanse, like supplement wise, it's making a huge difference. James writes in, can people live with H. pylori without treatment with no symptoms over 1 year? Will ACV and digestive enzymes eventually kill off the bacteria? I mean, I think people can live with it. I mean, we just know that it creates inflammation. It lowers stomach acid. There's studies showing that people that have it have increased risk for like anxiety and depression and mood issues. So, I mean, can you live with a lot of things? Yeah. I mean, a lot of people live with a lot of health issues. I just think people are going to do better with it. And could you live with an STD? I mean, you probably could live with it. I mean, would you rather just, get the antibiotics to wipe it out? Yeah, absolutely. Drake writes in, thanks, Dr. J, for your input. You're welcome. Sandra writes in, thanks for you taking the time. You're totally welcome. Screaming George, chronic fatigue, what testing is recommended? I mean, your thyroid, adrenal, and organic acid testing is best. Stephen wrote in, I took phosphatidylserine for over a year and reduced cortisol to normal, but I still have low cortisol symptoms, anxiety, and brain fog. on leaky gut protocol right now. I mean, you got to look deeper at the thyroid. I'd like to see where your adrenals are at, and you got to fix all of those things. And again, people that tend to have high cortisol, if you get the inflammation out of there, now the cortisol drops and now you're left with very low cortisol. So you probably need some cortisol support. How do you lower thyroid antibodies? I mean, that's going to be autoimmune template, selenium, getting the infections addressed. Hope that helps so far. I got to run here, guys. I got a patient I'm already late for, but it was phenomenal. I'll be back again on Monday. So save your questions and we will chat more then. Hope you guys have a phenomenal Friday. Take care.